Andrew, on today's edition of the Thrive Time Show, we're navigating through epic times together.
That's right, we are.
Us, the listeners, everybody out there, all freedom-loving Americans, we're all in this together. And we're all just looking for a source of truth that we can trust.
Yep.
And on today's show, we are interviewing the investigative journalist by the name of Vandersteel. She's the founder of thesteeltruth.com, and she's recently interviewed Sidney Powell, General Flynn, Patrick Byrne, the founder of Overstock.com. And on today's show, she joins us to share the truth behind the Nashville bombing, the betrayal that's occurring in the White House, the mechanics of the 2020 election fraud, the jaw-dropping knowledge bombs being dropped by attorney Lin Wood, and the news sources that you can finally trust. Andrew, I'm fired up.
And then we're going to Washington, D.C. to take back the White House. Yeah!
Some shows don't need a celebrity narrator to introduce the show, but this show does. 2 men, 8 kids, co-created by 2 different women, 13 multi-million-dollar businesses. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Thrive Time Show.
3, 2, 1, here we go!
Started from the bottom, now we here. Started from the bottom, and we'll show you how to get here. Started from the bottom, now we here. We started from the bottom, now we here. We started from the bottom, now we here. We started from the bottom, now we'll show you.
Yes, and yes. Thrive Nation, on today's show, we have a very important guest. When I say important, it's somebody out there just like you who is a very concerned, freedom-loving, God-fearing American. And just like you, she had the thought, what can I do to help this country? What can I do to share the truth? And unlike many people, she decided to take those that burning desire to share the truth and to turn it into action. And I just could not be any more excited about today's guest. Ann Vandersteel, welcome on to the Thrive Time Show. How are you?
I am wonderful, Clay. Thank you so much for including me with your incredible show and your amazing audience of, folks that are really in search of the truth, and they're patriots out there standing up for our republic. And that's what it's about, our civic duty.
Well,
so I appreciate the opportunity.
Well, you are very welcome and much deserving of that. We have so many listeners that reach out to me every single day, and they say, Clay, where can I go to find the truth? And I say this without reservation. I think that you, Ann, and your website, The Steel Truth, is an unbelievable resource. Can you share with our listeners what kind of things they can find on your website? And maybe tell us what the URL is and what they can find up there?
Sure. It's steeltruth.com. Steel like the metal, S-T-E-E-L. Also play on my last name, Vandersteel, of course, which was my father's name. He's a Dutch immigrant, served in the world in World War II as a test pilot. Patriot, conversed with Ronald Reagan. So if you go to steeltruth.com, you can find our shows, which we are repopulating because all of our shows were on YouTube and we use YouTube as the interface, but they deleted my YouTube channel 3 weeks ago. It's coming roaring back with subscribers. So all of our past shows, we're going to start uploading on Rumble. But we also have content. We have blogs. We have another writer, Huey Freeman, who is a new journalist, a national journalist for us on Steel Truth. And we start to supply supporting documents to certain interviews because people want to see the supporting evidence. So we're in the process of redoing all of that, but you can also find all of our platforms that we broadcast on there as well, including Red State Talk Radio and a few other over-the-top digital television channels. So we're spreading ourselves out as far and wide as possible to make sure people get access to information that they don't get on the mainstream media.
Now, as you've been growing your audience by sharing the truth, a lot of people are jumping into the boat. They want to learn more about the Steel Truth. Could you maybe share about the last couple programs you've put out and what our listeners can expect to learn there? Because you've been really dropping some bombshells with the Patrick Byrne story, and I'm assuming our listeners are not aware of all your recent shows, so maybe you could kind of enlighten them about what they can find.
Sure. Well, Bill Benny was on the other night. Last night we had 107, and we were focusing on the Nashville bombing and why the area was hit with the bomb. What's going on in that particular area, specifically the AT&T building. And in a nutshell, that AT&T building houses all of the data that the NSA collects in that one particular location, that it was magnetically stored and now eradicated because of again, a White House source giving me the fact that this is a thermobaric EMP, electromagnetic pulse bomb. They used the RV to target the area, but the RV was not the genesis of the explosion. So again, whether this was a white hat bomb or a black hat bomb has yet to be seen. Our guess is it's black hats, bad guys from the intel world. But, that's two really good interviews that break it down. 107 is a very popular favorite on the show. Patrick Byrne, of course, who is the former CEO of Overstock.com, came on my show a couple of different recently, and he dropped some massive bombs, Clay, including the fact that he was participating in an FBI sting operation in 2016 to bribe Hillary Clinton for $18 million. He was working with another country that he would not reveal the country's origin on the heels of a $20 million bribe from Turkey that Hillary took. FBI had all this information, and then once they realized, or once they thought Hillary was going to be president because they all drank the Kool-Aid, they backed off and shut the op down. Patrick Byrne has come out in protest and defiance, exposing all of this. I've had Sidney Powell on. General Flynn was on recently with me for a full hour the day he had his case dismissed, finally, out of Judge Sullivan's courtroom. So we're getting some incredible guests that are just dropping the truth bombs, which is so refreshing because Americans haven't heard most of this information.
Let's go with Sidney Powell. And again, there's so much that people can learn when they watch the show, and I know our listeners are going to go watch you or listen to you. What do all the listeners need to know right now about the things that maybe Sidney Powell shared on your show? What do you feel like everybody needs to know?
Well, Sidney, actually, let me be clear. Sidney hasn't been on in the last probably month and a half.
Gotcha.
I have to say, I have to go back and look. But I can tell you, just because in doing the interview with Patrick Byrne, when I was face-to-face with him, the first interview, she was in the room with us. It was the three of us, and she was sitting to my left about 3 feet away while Patrick was opposite me. And frankly, Sidney Powell is disappointed massively in our Supreme Court and how they are facilitating the cases that are being delivered. Cases with really good standing, right. Well-documented evidence. If anybody's following the hearings that Rudy Giuliani are doing, or with all the documented evidence, the information that Patrick Byrne has funded to have these white hat hackers go in and prove real-time election fraud happening before eyes of witnesses that cannot dispute the fact of what's going on. When you can't get the Supreme Court to acknowledge this, we have a problem. And, the fact that her cases get delivered on a Friday and by Monday morning they still haven't been incorporated into the docket is really rather shocking, considering the gravity and the magnitude of what's at stake here. This is our republic is hanging in the balance. And whether or not our citizens who have a legal right to vote are being recognized fairly in a court of law, and as the nation stands and how our Constitution supports our electorate. So this is shocking revelation, and what Lin Wood is dropping bombs on Twitter about is now substantiating why the Supreme Court is falling the way it is. He's now coming forward with information that is just jaw-dropping. One about Chief Justice Roberts and being compromised because of his illegal adoption of his children. And then he's talking about other people, including the Chief of Staff for President Trump, Mark Meadows, having a mistress holed up in North Carolina. So this is what the American people need to know. They need to know just how compromised, how deep the compromise goes across our entire government. And I think we're going to find, Clay, sad to say that a lot of our, congressional representatives and senators are deeply compromised and have been for some time.
Now,
this is why the president is asking us to come to D.C. He needs the support when all this truth gets revealed.
Pastor Dave Scarlett and Charlene Bollinger and Roger Stone and so many of my friends and colleagues are going to be there. I know General Flynn's going to be there. Are you going to be there on January 6th?
Oh, 100%. I arrived. My producer, Liz, who's my business partner, and what has made this show really just sparkle. She's incredibly smart and so talented. She and I will be arriving on the 4th, and we will be there through the 23rd because we plan to see this all the way through our president, who has been, duly reelected by the electorate here, overwhelmingly by the American citizens, the legal votes, that is. will be seated again on January 20th. So we plan on covering all of it. And I expect it to be a bumpy ride because, Clay, think about how many millions of people, billions, in fact, worldwide, have drank the Kool-Aid from the globalists, and the scales, so to speak, are now being lifted, and they're waking up to the reality they've been had.
Yes.
Everything. It's just, this shamdemic we've been under the spell of with the coronavirus, which you and I both know is nothing but a common cold that's been manipulated in the labs by some bad people that want to push vaccines, which are going to do terrible things to our DNA. This is where we're at, and it's shocking to hear, and it sounds off the wall to some that have never heard it, but it doesn't take a lot of time to dig, Clay, and see it for yourself in open source information. This is not classified stuff. This is right out there. They put it out there.
Hidden in plain
for us to
sight.
see.
What I want to do here is I want to maybe make this the most mind-expanding 10 minutes in the history of this show, because I know that you know a lot of the things that our listeners don't know. So I'm going to tee up the softball, and I'll let you just smash the home runs, okay? So when people went in to vote this year, when we all went to vote in the 2020 elections, many of us voted on these Canadian-owned Dominion voting machines using Chinese parts. What else do you know about the Dominion voting machines? Because most of my listeners are now waking up to the fact that Dominion shared office space with George Soros in Toronto. That's a fact. Most of our listeners now know that Eric Coomer, the head of strategy and security for Dominion, is a proud member of Antifa. So our listeners know that. But what else do our listeners need to know about Dominion?
Well, I'm going to make it very simple for your listeners because this is right out there again in open source. So let's just let's talk about the PRN Newswire, their press release that Dominion put out on July 16th of 2018, where they announced they'd been acquired by the management team at State Street Capital, which State Street Capital also had acquired Cyberlink. Cyberlink, which was a Dallas-based IT service company, was founded in 1999, but they provide managed application, network storage, desktop, and security services around the country to a host of clients and industries. And what's scary about that is we all now know these Dominion machines have been connected to the internet, which violates a federal statute. You cannot have your voting machine connected to the internet. Valerie Biden, who is Joe Biden's sister, is married to John Owens, and John Owens' brother is Kevin Owens, who is the founder of State Street Investors, which owns the Dominion voting company. So it's all in the family again.
Yes.
This is what's extremely disconcerting when you consider that Joe Biden had ballots stuffed by the millions and was only able to eke out by victories, fake victories in 6 swing states by tens of thousands of votes, not even 100,000 votes. He barely squeaked by after they stuffed these machines. This is another shocking factor is that you had senators like Senator Elizabeth Warren, Amy Klobuchar, Ron Wyden, and even Congressman Mark Pocan post a letter on December of 2019 to Dominion and Staple Street, asking whether Staple Street had an ownership stake that had reached any settlements with any state or local jurisdictions related to potential violations or breaches of contract. So you had people on the left who knew that their opportunity to win in a primary was being stolen by Dominion, send a letter to Dominion and Staple Street asking about the legitimacy of how they ran their company. So the left has known. They've known all along that Joe Biden should never have been the primary winner of the election race. They know this is a complete setup, but they're being silenced. And why are they being silenced? Because Dominion is a tool to facilitate the takeover of the United States of America by global elitists that are led going back to the British Empire, the British Privy Council, the same people who are bitter, Clay, that they lost their 13 colonies 244 years ago. It's all about getting back the Americans and making us pay and become servants to the monarch again. I know it sounds crazy, but the open source evidence is out there, and people don't have to spend 10 minutes to dig and find it. It's that obvious.
Now, if you're listening right now, okay, and you want to spend 1 minute to do the digging, if you will fire me off a text message right now to 918 851-6920. The listeners out there, you know this. Every time I have Lin Wood on a fireside chat, I tell you, just text me directly, 918-851-6920. You take the Is Clay Clark Crazy Challenge, and I'm going to send you irrefutable evidence of industrial level election fraud. Again, we all voted on these Dominion vote counting machines that have the communist Chinese parts in them. They share office space with George Soros. The head of security, Eric Coomer, the head of security and strategy, is a member of Antifa. Step 2, the software called Smartmatic, or you want to call it Sequoia, or you want to get into what holding company it's in today. Right. That was originally coded out by communist Venezuelans, and that allowed Hugo Chavez to take over Venezuela. What do people need to know about the software? What do people need to know about the software?
Well, I mean, the software has been able to manipulate voting data via the internet. It's that simple. Listen, do you remember when the internet was first invented and Netscape IPO'd back in 1994 and the dial-up rate was 2,400 baud? It was slow as molasses, but we were we were so excited that we could talk to each other across the world, and we didn't care if it took forever because it was packets of data. It wasn't our voice. It was just what it was. But again, you know, Big Brother is always watching you, and now we've allowed Big Brother into our electorate. And here's another piece of information your listeners may not know, but Avid Technologies is a company that does teleprompter software. They are working and used by all the big 6 media companies and all of their subsidiaries and local media outlets around the country. So when those talking heads, those NPCs, are all saying the same thing, it's a threat to our democracy. You've seen that video where they all are layered on each other saying the same thing over and over. That's Avid Teleprompter Technologies. But here's the thing. Feinstein's husband, Soros, Pelosi, all investors in that, again. But here's what's even more interesting. That same technology, that same company is actually connected into all of the voting machines through the Secretary of State offices in all 50 states.
Get out of here.
Now we know how these companies are able to determine who is going to win the election because they're also manipulating the data. It's not just Dominion, it's Avid as well. So that's one that we reported on, I think, 2 or 3 years ago about this. And it's just one that's just kind of been cast aside because Dominion is becoming so juicy in Salation and there's so much good data. But that's out there, too. This, Clay, it has been a rigged, fixed system for a long time. And how else can they control the world if they're not installing their puppet leaders around the world? They have to do it. And that's why, the Trump sensation, this MAGA red wave that broke the algorithm, they were only trying to steal the election by a few votes. They wanted it to be a close call to make the country look divided. It's not divided, Clay. We are, 80% in this country with this president.
Amen.
And they stole it. They stole it.
Well, I'll say this. Everything you just said is always backed up, and that's the one thing I love about your website, thesteeltruth.com, is you back everything with facts. You see, you're not just making accusations. You're not talking in puffery. You're not using generalities. If people want to dig in and learn more about the Avid system or some of the things you've said, what's the best part of your website to go to, or where's the best place for our listeners that are new to the Steel Truth experience to go to verify some of the things you've said?
Well, I'll tell you this much. I will go back because all of that work got deleted when YouTube deleted our account, which is what fires all of our videos. I will go and post the links to all of our Avid shows where we talk about this because I agree with you. And I haven't had a chance since we lost our YouTube account 3 weeks ago. We've actually had to rebuild everything on our website. I've got most of my website still in private mode because I've got to go back and repopulate hundreds and hundreds of videos.
And folks, I can vouch for that. I want to make sure people understand this, okay? A lot of people are being deplatformed, and when you're an investigative journalist who's over the target, they're going to target you. And so what she said is 100% true if you're tuning in for the first time. Now, I want to cover this again. So point number one, we're voting on these Dominion machines, these Canadian machines. I'm repeating this because people are hearing this for the first time. They have communist parts. They share office space with George Soros. The head of strategy and security, Eric Coomer, is a big fan of Antifa. Step 2, you use the Smartmatic software, a.k.a. Sequoia, coded out by communist Venezuelans. Step 3, your votes are then sent to Frankfurt, Germany. What? Where they can be switched? Do you want to comment on that?
I absolutely do. Sidney Powell has been pounding it out there. She has seen the data coming out of those Seidel servers in Frankfurt, Germany. She saw election night. And I dare say that I'm sure the president did too. I believe this has truly been a white hat operation where President Trump was well aware. I mean, President Trump tweeted out 74 million votes. I think it's even north of that. But he tweeted out 74 million votes that he won on election night. Now, how would he know that number? Why would he? You know, President Trump, Sidney Powell, Lin Wood, these are people with integrity. These are people with everything to lose. Why would they put something out there they could not back up? And when you look at Sidney Powell, who says Seidel servers showed that it was a massive red wave, including California turning red for the president, which anybody with half a brain would have to believe that, because you have Gavin Newsom turning off the water to crops in California, demanding people stay home. You can have no more than 6 people in this insanity over there. Who wants to live under those conditions? Nobody does. We're talking about Nazi Germany on steroids going on in California. And I live in Las Vegas now, and I'm afraid that party's coming to a city near me thanks to our incredible tyrannical governor here, Sisolak. But this is absolute fact. It's coming out in spades. And when it all is proven, and that's why I believe, again, President Trump is asking Americans to show up to D.C. or at least show up to their capital in all 50 states on January 6th, because this is going to be revealed to the public with evidence and facts. And we're going to show real-time vote switching that it has occurred in Georgia. When all this gets revealed, what is the rest of the world going to do, Clay? They have to step up and go, wait a minute. We are no longer, what is it they say, mad as hell and going to take it anymore? That's where we are.
Now, this is where I want to demonstrate your wisdom on this, because our listeners are hearing a lot of this for the first time. See, what's fun about our show and your show is people, they discover the truth, and now they're like, oh, man, I got to share this with a friend. And they share it with that really close friend, you know, the friend who's seen them fall before in life and has been there with them through tough stuff. But what's happening is it's almost like everyone in America is discovering, Ann, that it's almost like, and again, I'm figuratively speaking, I've been married for 20 years. This has never happened to me. But it's like everyone's discovering that their spouse has been cheating on them for decades. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, because people have been watching the mainstream media, and you say, how is that possible? Well, one of my very good friends in the Tulsa designated market area was a reporter. And I remember seeing her on the air years ago, and I said, what you said tonight at no point is accurate. And she goes, well, I'm just reading the prompter, Clay. And I said, what? What are you saying? She goes, well, the journalists do all the vetting. Well, I've met these journalists before, Ann. I've met these journalists, and a lot of these journalists just grab stuff off the AP wire and they go, well, there it is. There it is. Okay, there it is. So you got somebody who just skimmed it, and who literally they skimmed it from the AP. They put it in the hands of the of the personality who has very pretty teeth, a very pretty smile. They tend to work out a lot. They're like a model. They're a male model or a female model, and they're just reading this. So you sharing how this all fits together makes sense. But how should people go about sharing the truth? Let's just say that you now know the truth and you want to share it with a friend. What do you advise? What's the best strategy to do that?
The best strategy that I deploy is I use my trusted websites and news makers, and I have investigative journalists that I also confer with, people that I trust, that whose names they don't like to be out there, but I do. I try to look at both sides. So when I get a piece of information that sounds very salacious and it's coming from a conservative, I'll go and Google that story on the left, and I'll see what the left is saying. I'll go to New York Times. I'll go to the Wall Street Journal. I'll go to the Washington Post, what have you. And I'll look at what they're responding to that story. And when they're categorically denying it using the same vernacular in news source after news source on the left, I know it's a 4 a.m. talking point that they've said, we've got to combat this. So it becomes, and of course you have the Snopes and all the other fact checkers out there that are saying the same thing. When it's so manufactured like that, you know it's obviously something that they're concerned about and they're trying to cover up. Then I go back to my trusted news sources and I look and see how they're reporting on it. And nobody that I trust is ever using the same exact language over and over again. They're actually doing the work and investigating the story and looking at it. And then I do my own digging. So this is how I crowdsource information, so to speak. And I talk to people that way, and I use discernment. That's what's critical. In fact, the other day I was talking about Mitch McConnell and his decision to, not support the president's
Boo!
$2,000
Boo!
stimulus check and tie it back to, of course, election integrity and other stuff. And I thought to myself, why is he doing that? Is he being a good guy or a bad guy? What is he trying to do? Is he just trying to make the president look bad, or is it something bigger? Do they not expect Kelly Loeffler and Purdue to win on this January 5th? Do they care if they win? What's the big picture going on? And again, maybe they just want gridlock in D.C. McConnell is, after all, a globalist. He's married to somebody in the Tulane Show, and her family's got the big transportation company coming out of China, and they get a lot of money from her parents from China. So maybe they just want gridlock in D.C. Maybe they don't want Loeffler to win, or maybe they do, to maintain a balance of power between the legislative branch and the executive branch if they can install Joe Biden. So you have to start looking at what is the big picture. What is it they want? They want status quo. They don't want Trump. They're happy with status quo and the slow demise of the United States into a socialist, ergo a communist country. This is what they want, one world government. How do they do it? Take it down little by little, lock us in our homes, tax us into an oblivion, keep us scared, feed us disinformation with the mockingbird media, and sell the same narrative over and over and over. And what they don't want is what you and I are doing, which is combating that narrative with open source information that is exposing them to be globalists trying to control all of us. It's incredible.
Now, if you're out there today and you are hearing what she said for the first time or maybe the second time, but you've certainly not heard it enough to make it true in your own mind, you haven't researched it, if you will click on timetofreeamerica.com, timetofreeamerica.com, and you click on the truth about the global reset there, everything is cited there, or you can fire me off a text at 918-851-6920, 918-851-6920. And with about 90 seconds left to go here, I want to ask you two final questions. Are there news sources beyond the steeltruth.com that you would recommend? I mean, do you recommend like the Epoch Times? Do you say?
Absolutely.
I mean, just fire off a few names that we can go to.
Sure. Epoch Times, if you want quick headlines, you just want quick stuff that you can go and use to dig on further. Gateway Pundit does a great job. TheGatewayPundit.com does a fantastic job of just grabbing the headline stories that you can use to chew and dig on deeper if you want. I love the American Thinker. I think they're fantastic with some of their stuff. Red State is also very good. Washington Times is very good. I think John Solomon, justthenews.com, is also very good on a more mainstream flavor, if you will.
Yeah.
And then, of course, aimfortruth.org, AIM4truth.org. Looks a little unconventional with how they present in terms of the formatting of the content, but they have incredible diggers over there that break it down, and they can break down Dominion, Smartmatic, Lord Malik Brown, British Privy Council, British Pilgrim Society, loop it all back into including this vaccine that Moderna has put out, that Vice President Pence recently went to Catalent in Indiana, and they're calling it a bioweapon, which is very, very disconcerting. So they're a great, they're on the forefront of some of the information. I think Michael McKibben over there is doing a great job with those folks. So this is the spectrum of researchers and news that I look at.
Yeah.
And then, of course, I have my contacts.
Now, folks, if you're out there listening again, you want to know the truth about those vaccines. We recently interviewed Dr. Christiane Northrup, the New York Times bestselling author, back when that meant something. Dr. Christiane Northrup and Oklahoma's top virology expert, Dr. Jim Meehan. And they explained that inside the COVID-19 vaccines, you'll find something called fetal tissue, fetus tissue, baby tissue. You're going to find RNA modifying nanotechnology. You're going to find a patent number / cryptocurrency system that works using body activity called 06. The patent number, the vanity patent number is 060606. It's owned by Bill Gates. You're going to find a lot of nefarious stuff in that. So, folks, again, fire me off a text to 918-851-6920, 918-851-6920. I'll send that to you. Final question for you. I will be in D.C. I will be hanging out with Pastor Dave Scarlett, Amanda Grace the Prophet, Pastor Locke, Pastor Brian Gibson. That'll be our flow. Charlene Bollinger, I believe, General Flynn. That'll be kind of our Roger Stone group. Are you going to, where will you be there? If our listeners are there and they want to see you or meet you or hear you speak or fellowship, where should they go?
I will be on stage 7 from 10 to 12, which is over in front of the Capitol facing the Supreme Court, where there'll be speakers there from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. And then I'll be at the Freedom Plaza from 12 to 4. I am conducting interviews for all the speakers that get off the stage on both locations, including I've been asked to speak on stage 7 somewhere between 10 to 12, as I will be there anyway. So I'm not sure how long the slot is or what time it is. But I'm going to be in D.C. from January 4th to January 23rd because we intend to see this entire coup d'etat being unfold and, of course, taken out. We're going to smash that. We're going to take back our country, which is why President Trump wants the Patriots there. It's 1776 again. This is our revolution. We've let our country go. We're going to take it back from the brink, and we're going to continue to conduct ourselves as the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, and I intend to see that happen.
Folks, if you're out there and you're saying, well, what options can the president take? What options does he have at his disposal? If you look on today's show notes, you can click a link here to the White House executive order on imposing certain sanctions in the event of foreign interference in a U.S. election. That was the executive order went live on September 12th, 2018. You can see that. The President Trump could also use the Insurrection Act. He also has recently appointed on November 9th a new Secretary of Defense, Christopher C. Miller, who controversially enough loves the country and the Constitution. There's a lot of reasons to be encouraged out there. Bonus fry question, and bonus fry. I want to respect your time, but a bonus fry, extra French fry we found in the bag there. Question for you. Why should Americans be encouraged? Because you're encouraged and I'm encouraged, but our listeners need some encouragement. And help us.
Encouraged because finally the scales are being removed off of all of our eyes and people are waking up worldwide. I talk to people all over the world. I get communications from people worldwide, people that never voted before, people that voted opposite myself for years, and they are finally recognizing and they're happy to run out and tell all their friends. And this is what has me incredibly encouraged. And the fact that Americans, when the president asks, are turning out, and they're doing it on their own. Look at all of the spontaneous Trump rallies and vote parades, et cetera. This is what has me encouraged. Never in my lifetime or in any presidential history that I can think of have we ever seen a country stand up the way we are right now. And this is what has the deep state in an absolute panic. This is why all assets are deployed from their end and the Mockingbird media to just flat out lie, cheat, and steal their way into the White House. And Americans are not going to have it. And all eyes are watching worldwide on what happens on January 6th, because the rest of the world knows how America goes, so goes the rest of the world. They need us, that big boat and that rising tide, to lift the rest of them. And they're just absolutely holding their breath.
Amen. Amen. Check it out. It's the truth. It's thesteeltruth.com, thesteeltruth.com. That's Ann Vandersteel. I can't wait to shake your hand in D.C. Ma'am, you're a great American.
Me too.
I appreciate you so much, and have a blessed day.
You too, Clay. Thank you so much. God bless.
And now, without any further ado, 3, 2, 1, boom!